This episode of Hope Ignited was recorded in June 2023.
All right, you guys, welcome back to the Hope Ignited table.
Welcome, everyone.
Kevin, it's so good to see you.
It's good to see you too, Ashley.
I am very excited because few and far between do you get to have a podcast with who you want to be when you grow up.
Right.
And I can say undoubtedly, you know this, people that are listening to the podcast today that maybe have known me for quite some time know that if I had an end goal, if I had a big dream,
This is right up your alley.
No, this would be to do what she does for a living. She's my hero. She's a consummate professional. She gives back to NBCF in so many ways. Mm-hmm. She's a mom. She's a friend. But my personal goal, my soul sister, welcome to Hope Ignited, Danya Bacchus. We're so happy to have you.
Right,
Thank you.
Danya.
I'm so happy to be here. And the fact that we were able to schedule it correctly. We are very busy people, and trying to get on each other's calendars have been a little bit of a challenge, but I'm so glad to be here with you both.
You know what's funny? Normally when guests are busy, we don't get to see them. But you know, when you're busy, it's because we see a lot of you as a CBS News correspondent. There are even, we see it all the time. Here locally, it's just so cool that it doesn't matter where you are. You're coming to us from LA today. I do think it's important for people to know that. But we get to see you all the time. So it's so great.
Yeah, it's been a busy year so far for me. Sometimes I was like, oh my gosh, it's almost July. Yeah. Just with my job, constantly having to travel at a moment's notice, which for most people that would drive them crazy because that really disrupts your entire schedule. As you mentioned, I have 2 kids, and you know how it is. You get them on a routine. We're going to wake up. We're going to get dressed. I'm going to take you to school. Then I'm going to pick you up. We're going to have dinner, maybe watch a little bit of Bluey at the end of the day. But when we get the call for breaking news that can take me anywhere that I don't know where I'm going to go and when I'm going to come back, that can be very challenging for the family dynamic. Thankfully, I have a very supportive partner and my husband who is able to pick up the pieces, and we have friends here who help out. But yes, usually when I'm busy, that is because you're seeing me reporting on something happening somewhere in the nation.
Well, you're easy to love, girl. It's easy to have a tribe surrounding you to pick up the pieces when you need it. I think one of my favorite things is when you're covering something unique, and I know we'll talk about a few of those stories today, or maybe you're at a really unique event that some of us dream of attending once in our lifetime. The way that people rally around you and root for you and your tribe of just comments and likes and shares of people that are just so excited to see the success that you've had. What I'd like to do is let's start from the beginning. Is this did you wake up? For me, it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I wanted to be April. That was my moment. That was my microphone calling. When was that moment for you? This wasn't even your major in college at the beginning.
No, so I did not have the April O'Neil moment. I never watched the news and said, "Oh my gosh, I want to be Connie Chung or Katie Couric, or all of the other amazing women who have come before me." It was actually, I went on a college visit. I'm a graduate of North Carolina A&T in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Whoop, whoop.
My parents took me on a college visit, and I wanted to be a doctor. I, was going to major in biology. My mother, in her wisdom, set up an appointment for us to meet with the dean of the biology department. And in that meeting, I fell asleep. And right home, both of my parents said to me, "You need to rethink what it is that you're going to do, because clearly if you're falling asleep in the meeting with the dean, that's how it's going to be when you're taking those classes." And my mom said, "You like to talk a lot. Have you ever thought about doing anything with communications?" And here I am. So thank you to my mom and my dad for also, co-signing and encouraging me to reimagine what it is that I wanted to do, because I was dead set on being a doctor, and they knew, I think, they knew my strengths at that time, and math and science has never been, I'm not good with numbers. I'm good with words. And that has worked out very well for me.
Preach. I feel you on that. And you got to actually be a part, it progressed quickly, right? So you got to do the newscast at college. They actually had a show there, right? On the college campus?
Right. We had a show on the campus. I actually ended up having my work study program. I don't know if most people know about that, but that's when, it's kind of like a financial aid program. Like you have to work in order to pay for college. So I had a work study program on campus, which was in the television studio. So I was there, helping people check out cameras. Of course, back then, I feel so old. Let me pull out my gray hair. We had these big, giant cameras that you had to lug around with the tripods. And I was pretty much in charge of, checking them out to the upperclassmen on campus who were doing the newscast there and, like checking them back in, kind of, stepping in whenever needed for the newscast. And then, yes, as I, became an upperclassman myself, we also produced a newscast on campus and had several internships that allowed me to work in newsrooms across the country. So I think it was then the internships definitely sealed the deal for me. Like, that's when I was like, this is it. This is what I know I want to do. And even then, I really wasn't sure if I wanted to be on camera or behind the scenes. I always I'm going to be a producer, eventually a news director of a local station. And then I decided, okay, let me see how far I can go on air. And here we are.
I think a lot of people just don't. I did the same internship, right? So Channel 10 in my hometown. And I had this perception that there was a guy that set up the tripod and the camera, and then someone powdered my nose, and then someone edited it. And then I got back. No, you do. I mean, at least I had to do all of those things. I set up my own camera. I pressed play. I got in front of it. I did what I needed to do, went back. I had probably an hour at best to complete the package, do the lower thirds, do all the editing myself on Avid back in the day. And it's a very hard job. When you talk about being behind the desk, being on location, explain to people that are listening that maybe don't understand. It's not like you say, well, I'm just going to be the anchor behind the desk, right? I mean,
right.
How does that assignment work?
Yeah, so it's so funny because we do all think that we are going to be the anchor behind the desk. I'll never forget in college, we had a professor that said, write your 5-year plan. And most of us in that class said, I'm going to graduate from college and I'm going to be an anchor on the Today Show. I'm going to be the anchor for GMA. I'm going to, anchor or be, one of the main sports reporters on ESPN. And I never forget, my professor laughed at us. I mean, she had a really good laugh, and it wasn't like a disrespectful laugh, but it was like, oh, you naive children. That's not how this works. We had to start at the bottom, as the young kid said, started from the bottom. Now I'm here, but you had to work your way. The way media works is that they're different markets, and you start in a small market. I started in Salisbury, Maryland, which is on the eastern shore.
They make great
of
steaks.
Maryland. Yes, near Ocean City. If you know Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, that's where I started, and it was market 148. At the time. Now, there's one and then there's 148, which is down at the bottom. So yeah, you start there. You're usually shooting and editing your own things. You're writing multiple stories a day. You are literally running around like a chicken with its head cut off, trying to get things done. And it's all you. I wrote my own newscast. It ended up becoming the weekend anchor there. I was producing that newscast. I mean, you have to run teleprompter for yourself sometimes. So yeah, no, there's no hair and makeup, someone coming to powder your nose or picking out your clothes and making sure you have coffee or doing any of those things. You were doing all of those things at the beginning. And then it progressed. I ended up getting a job in Memphis, Tennessee, which was a medium-sized market. That was number 48.
Moving up. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love Memphis, hands down, one of my favorite cities and places to work. I say Memphis grew me as a reporter just because there were so many different things happening in Memphis, and you had to constantly be on your toes and really read into everything that was happening in the community there. Now there I did have a camera person, but it was still a lot of running around. And as you guys know, in Texas, Memphis humidity in Texas, I'm sure it's probably the same.
No joke.
So
wow.
Hair, makeup, forget about it. It just feels like somebody is throwing a hot bucket of water on you whenever you're outside reporting mosquitoes at night. So yeah, I went to Memphis. I stayed there. Then I got a job in San Diego, California. And now I have made my way to Los Angeles. So it has been a gradual build for me. It wasn't anything where I, graduated and then all of a sudden I had a job at CBS. Yeah, it was a slow build.
Do people go the other direction?
That seems kind of sad. Does anyone end up in Salisbury from LA?
You know what? Yes. And sometimes
that's so depressing.
And it's not necessarily a sad thing depending on where you are in life, right? Like some people do make it to the top and then they say, you know what, I'm going to go back to Salisbury. That's where my friends and my family, they're there. I can go be an anchor and do my job and be close to
settle
family.
down.
So there's a lot of different circumstances. Sometimes it's because people have made some really big mistakes and they have to go backward. But most times, if you do decide you want to go down in markets, it's usually personal preference because you have something happening, in your personal life that really affects that decision.
Because to stay at the LA level, what does it require of you?
A lot of time. A lot of time. To stay at the LA level, I think you really do have to make sure that you are on top of your game, meaning you're constantly reading different publications, different articles, knowing what's happening, not only in Los Angeles, but across the nation. Because what I do as a national reporter, it's not just about what's happening in LA. I need to know what's happening in Moscow, Idaho, where, the University of Idaho students were killed. I covered the story there. In Uvalde, Texas. You need to know what's happening on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. So you have to pretty much know what's happening across the country. And that really helps to keep you employed because we have to constantly pitch stories, too. That's another thing that I think people think, oh, breaking news happened, you just go out to those stories. Yes, that happens. But a lot of times we have to be able to go to our producers and say, hey, I read about this, or someone called me and told me about this. I think this would be a great story. So we have to constantly be what we call pitching stories to producers in order to even make it on air.
That is like the movies. See?
Yeah, you're selling. Yeah. There's all these facets to the job, really. It's interesting because you got this administrative behind the scenes kind of research work, and then you've got this sales part where you're having to go and pitch ideas and persuade people, and then and I would have to imagine, again, it's like going back to Salisbury there where you have to learn how to do that from the beginning. And so you've built your own brand essentially, and then, getting to the place that you're at. To stay at that sharp level, you have to really keep on top of it. So what's an example of a story that I'm so fascinated by, this kind of drop everything and go there? Like I know a recent one was the king. It was the Queen's funeral. So Queen Elizabeth's funeral, right? Can you tell us about that?
Yes. So that was a situation where earlier in the year, last year, every year we kind of try to at least prepare for stories, right? Give passport information. Hey, if this happens, you might be called upon to travel. And it was a situation where I literally got a call from my boss and she said, we're getting word that things are not looking well for the Queen. If she passes, we're going to need you to travel. And I was like, to England? And it was like, yes.
No, to Kansas, actually. It's kind of odd.
Exactly. But,
They just decided to do it in the middle of...
to England. And it was, and sometimes they will look for flights for you. And it's like, oh, it looks like there's a 10:30 p.m. flight that you can catch. And at this point, it was maybe, 10 o'clock in the morning. But still, this is an international trip. This isn't like, oh, you're just going to get on a plane and go to Sacramento or to San Francisco, California. This is across the pond.
You're not getting a mani-pedi. You're not like,
right.
What is life?
No.
Oh my
also, that's kind of a big event.
Gosh.
Like, did you have to, where you would really think about what you're going to wear, right?
You just go binge The Crown or something. You're like, how do I prepare for this? You got to be worldly. Yeah.
Well, season 3.
There are protocols that you have to follow, right?
Yeah.
Like one of the things was most of the presenters, they call their anchors presenters in England, were wearing black because it was, pretty much a state of mourning in England because the Queen had passed away. So it was definitely me in the closet trying to pull out every black or dark colored clothing that I had. But it was, that night was on a plane to England. And I ended up staying there for 12 days.
Oh.
I had no clue that I was going to stay there that long. I thought, okay, how we do, Queen has passed. It'll probably be like 3 or 4 days, but I was there for 12 days. I missed my wedding anniversary, and my son's birthday.
Oh,
during
bless your heart.
So those are just some of the little sacrifices, that you make. But it was an amazing opportunity because it was such a big deal, and a story of a legacy of a woman who has made a really big impact, not just in England, but of course across the world. Did
you have a deeper appreciation for royalty history and royalty gossip, if you will, after coming back from that?
Yes.
So you're all in. Did you watch The Crown beforehand?
No, I didn't, but I did when I came back. Yeah. And it is something when you see people who would line the streets. I mean, they waited in line just to walk past her coffin for hours, some people even days. And once you're in that and you see that appreciation and really the deep history that is tied to that and the tradition tied to it, it did give me a new appreciation of the royal family beyond just, the gossip that we love to to learn about here. But it was like, oh no, this is a really big deal.
When I pray for that for our country, don't you pray for that for our leaders, that regardless of who it is that's in charge, that they command and we demand that type of respect for the leadership in this country? I mean, that's how I feel about Janelle. I give Janelle that kind of love for NBCF.
You do?
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
The matriarch of our mission.
That's right.
The queen.
Yeah, well, it was one of those things where I had to think, I don't know who this or if, as Americans, we do have that level of loyalty to a leader. Because like I said, when people stood in line for days at a time, just to walk past the coffin, I think all of us American journalists there were thinking, who would that happen for? I mean, we see it, when we have leaders lie in state, of course, in Washington, D.C., but that just seemed to take it to a new level there.
We could learn a lot. We could learn a lot from
There's
that.
a wonderful, I always love slipping in Band of Brothers quotes. It's one of the great all-time movie documentary, whatever you want to call it. Wasn't a documentary, movie series on HBO. And one of the former officers of this guy who had been promoted several times to an officer, he had really mistreated this younger officer. And so they sort of switched places and they got to this point to where now that he was the subordinate, so the really nasty officer guy was now underneath this other officer. And he saw him, out on the battlefield. And so the kind of the jerk officer guy didn't want to salute him. And so the main officer was saluting him and he wouldn't salute. And he made him salute, and he said, "You salute the rank, not the man." So he was reinforcing that this kind of thing is bigger than what we're talking about is honoring traditions and honoring, respecting the sacredness of the whole thing in a time when we just throw everything away so fast. I think, there's this disposable type of attitude that I think we have in culture about a lot of things. Like we're done. Oh, that person entertained us for a week. Now we're done with them. And we just get rid of them, and push them out. But so I had a question about, I noticed on here you'd done some interesting work around American Idol and even Dancing with the Stars. How did you get involved in that?
Yeah, when I first came to LA, I was doing freelance work for ABC News. And a part of that assignment was covering American Idol and also Dancing with the Stars. And so I got the chance to go to the Dancing with the Stars finales, which was amazing. Wow. Just to see everyone practice and then go out there and perform. And at the time, my mother was probably the biggest Dancing with the Stars fan, and she watched every episode. So it was really cool also to be able to call her, send her pictures when I was with the winners, or
the
even
mirror
the
ball trophy. You're selfies with the mirror ball trophy, sending it to your mom.
Yeah, so
cool.
Your
Your mom must have been telling all her friends. I can't even imagine the bragging she was doing, right?
Right. And you know how moms do. They'll tell everyone. It's like, put an announcement in the church bulletin, let the local paper know.
The cashier at the grocery store. Oh, by the way, did I tell you about my daughter? Well, no, ma'am, I don't even know you, actually.
Yeah, so. Right?
Exactly.
Wow. So when you were doing that type, have you ever had any kind of I call those moments where you just kind of take a picture in your head of it's such a special moment that you freeze frame it. what are some moments like that in your career where you had a freeze frame of it was such a profound moment, whether it made you really happy or it was sad or something that was just profound and created a snapshot in your head at that moment?
No, I definitely think the Queen's funeral was one of those moments. And I actually just did a sit-down interview with Vice President Kamala Harris last week. And that was a moment where I realized that, wow, most people don't get the chance to have a sit down
with the vice president of the United States.
Did she ask about us? Did she ask how we're doing?
Yeah, she was like, hey, tell my friend that, NBCF that I'm thinking about them.
Yeah, I'm sure she did.
I knew it. She was in Dallas a couple days ago.
No, but that was definitely one of those moments where I had to stop and I really just looked around the room that we were in, just knowing the history, of where I was. And really tried to take a snapshot. I told my producers after, it really felt like I was on the outside of that interview looking in, because I was just trying to really take in that moment, because that was history.
That's your God wink. I feel that Tabitha Brown, I mean, the Grammys, you've done some fabulous red carpets. I want to know that side of it, just as a fan of seeing you in that gown. And I feel like that's your moment, girl. Like I love those moments for you, but what's it like being on the glamour side of it?
It's so funny because we always think that these things are glamorous. And then when it's really, I love doing the red carpet stuff, but it's a lot of work too. Mm-hmm. First of all, you have to be there like hours early and you're in a little tiny spot with like your camera. And then I don't know if you've ever seen, but it's like a row of media. Everyone is yelling, the celebrity's name to try to convince them to come over and talk to you. So it's a lot of fun. It's really cool being able to meet them because, as I think we have this idea of, what we think celebrities will be like when we meet them. And sometimes they live up to that. And sometimes it can be rather disappointing. I'm not going to go into that part of it, but.
Who's going to surprise you in a positive way? How about that?
Yeah.
And then we'll get to the other one.
No. That's a good one. Who surprised me in a positive way? James Corden. I just interviewed him because he just, wrapped up the Late Late Show. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I have to say that I had heard some things that I thought it was not going to be as pleasant as it was. But he was absolutely phenomenal. And very pleasant. I hope I don't get in trouble.
No, that's great to give anyone a positive light.
But no, he was fantastic. And I really enjoyed talking to him. So that was, I think, the most recent person that I thought was lovely. You mentioned Tabitha Brown. She is just as genuine and amazing as she comes across on social media and any other, platform, her Target ads.
Oh my gosh.
That is genuine. And you can feel that love and that warmth when you meet her. She's another really great person that did not disappoint at all.
Well, there are very few people in this lifetime where you want to watch them, you want to consume everything they do, you want to buy the clothes they put out, you want to, she's living. I was so excited whenever I saw that you had the opportunity to interview her. But Kamala Harris, how about that? Vice President, that's a big one. That's so special.
Yeah. That's a really big deal. And we're talking to her about, unfortunately, it's a really sad topic, but maternal mortality, is an issue that we've been seeing here more recently in the news and has increased, with the pandemic. So we were able to really sit down and talk to her about some initiatives that the Biden-Harris administration has put together to try to combat that. And we're going to be doing a really big in-depth piece for that on BET News on July 2nd.
What's a project that you're most proud of? I mean, you've got your hand in so many things right now. I mean, I'm not going to take away from the amazing wife and mother and friend and mentor that you are, but on a professional side of things, what's a project that you're most proud of?
I was able to do a series on Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street, that involved my family history. My great-great-grandparents owned the Dreamland Theater in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And that, if you know anything about the history of Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, it was pretty much wiped away during a race massacre in 1921. And I was able to do a really in-depth piece looking at my family history. Wow. I was able to find audio recordings from my great-grandfather who was alive during the time, and he lived to tell the story. I spoke to a historian who actually interviewed my great-grandfather. That's where the audio tapes came from. And he told me, your great-grandfather waited for years for someone to tell this story. And look, here you are now as a member of the family being able to tell the family story. So that was one for me that I think after CBS said, yes, we want you to do it. After that story went out, I was like, you know what? I could retire now, because I really felt like I
climbed the mountain
that
there.
was like a calling or a purpose. Sometimes you don't realize what that like purpose is, or you're still trying to find it. But that was one of those stories where I was like, I was put here to tell this story, and the divine intervention and the divine order and the way that it happened, it was just amazing.
What an important legacy. I bet that's something you're so proud to bring home to your family and your kids, and just to be able to show them that. I wish that we could talk for hours and hours and hours, but we will have to let you go soon. I know how busy you are, and there's breaking news going on all over the world around us. I know that. I do think it's important for people to know about the time and the service you give to National Breast Cancer Foundation. You're so selfless in that way. I mean, we have an advisory council for people that maybe don't know. And a part of our advisory council, there's different kind of committees. And we met specifically through the Public Relations Advisory Council Committee. And a big piece of that has just been really helping us get our PR department off the ground, being readily available to mentor and to fact check, and really just to make us better. And I can speak from experience because we're advisory council buddies attached at the hip. Not every day you get to do that with your hero, but I have the fortune of doing that every day. But you always make yourself available to me. And I laugh because it could be a 2 a.m. email, and I'm weary of the time difference, right? But I hear from you. You always take the time. And I just want you to know how much that means to me. You've grown me immensely. Like, I just feel so implored to do better and to be better because of you. I don't take that lightly, and I don't take that for granted. But you also have made NBCF a better organization because of it. Just opening up your contacts to us and your skill set. It's something that I just don't take it for granted. And I hope that you know that, because I also know how busy you are. I've got 2 kiddos too. So I appreciate you. And for your time today. I mean, this has been a long time coming. We've been trying to get this on the books. And what I look forward to, and I hope that you'll do it, is to come back with some more really cool breaking news stories, because you've just been a part of so many unique things. I would love just to take pieces of that and to be able to explore that with you in the future at the Hope Ignited table.
Yeah. And I have a question before we go. I want to ask you about hope and what that means to you, and the importance of hope in a time when it's scary. You've been a reporter firsthand in some terrifying moments where people are going through awful things. What role does hope play?
That is such a good question, because I really do think hope is everything in moments where I have been in some really sad situations. One I think of immediately is when I had to go cover Uvalde, Texas, and the shooting there. That is something that I think will always, always stay with me. And for many of us, especially whether you're a parent or not. But for me, hope is optimism that things are going to work out the way that they're supposed to. And I do think that you have to have that no matter what the scenario. And I know that we can, as you get older, we become a little bit more jaded. And I think, life experiences can sometimes diminish hope a little. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to hope and what I see, and I think what makes me excited about the future is that when I am on stories and I meet young people who are so full of hope, who are so full of endless possibilities and thinking that, they can do any and everything, that really inspires me. And I think if we could have that type of hope, we would be a lot better just as individuals. I think we have to really tap into the inner child and remember what it was like to really think that anything was possible, And so I really hope that when you say hope, that's what I think about. I think about my kids. I think about when, my son comes to me and says that he wants to be a superhero, or, he wants to be the president, or, whatever it is that day that he feels like he wants to be, or even if there's just scenarios and for some reason, he just thinks that like, oh, it'll be okay. Like, we'll just do this. He always has like a little plan. That's hope to me. And I think that you have to have that in order to continue living life on a daily basis. Because without it, I think you really, it's hard. It's really, really hard to, I think, live without hope.
Yeah, well said.
So good. Well, we hope you will join us again soon. It's been such a pleasure.
Of course.
Danya, thank you for all that you do and for who you are. Thank you for loving our mission and the women and the families that we serve. We're better because of you. And we look forward to welcoming you guys back to the next episode of Hope Ignited. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Donnie. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.